What's up, folks? How's everyone doing today? It has been a while. Quite a while. Anyway, just going to be doing some... an intro. I just threw a couple of samples together. I've kind of been spending a lot of time offline learning to play the Duduk. And so these are just some stuff that I've like recorded of myself playing. A couple of pads and stuff. But yeah, sounding pretty good so far. I mean, like, all you need is that, like, Duduk with some reverb and a kick with some reverb, and you got an intro, right? Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. Like I said, it's been a while. Just touching base, going to do a bit of music production today. Going to make some psytrance. Can you believe it? What's new? So... where should we start? Should we make some kind of like atmosphere thing? I've been really enjoying making atmospheric sounds with phase plant. So let's see here. We're in G today. So I've kind of got this idea which I've been working around while creating atmospheric sounds lately, where I'll kind of split it into almost like different frequency bands, you know, where I'll have like a low frequency layer doing like a Reese sound, some mid frequency layers also maybe also doing like some kind of Reese stuff, and then like a textural layer on top. And the cool thing obviously about Faceplant is with the groups you can kind of build them. I actually have a template here which I've made recently. Template. I can just show you the idea of what I'm talking about. Excuse me. How many templates do I have? Damn. I think it's the big Atmos template. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so this is basically a Reese thing on the bottom that's got a filter, just like removes everything above a certain frequency. Another Reese thing, these basically just have a bunch of unison on it. That's got a band pass filter, so basically the first Reese is like sitting in the low frequencies, and then with a band pass it's kind of cutting out the lows and cutting out the highs, and putting another Reese like in the middle. And then here on top, I kind of change it up here a little bit. Sometimes I'll do just like panning sine waves and stuff. What we can do here is actually just... I'll mute all of these and show you the layers like one by one. We'll introduce them. Just put a bit of reverb on here. Okay, so that's just the bottom layer. And if we add the mids... I should probably take this filter off. That's just creating some movement and stuff, just so we can hear more about what's happening on the top end and stuff. Most of these parameters just have a bunch of random stuff on it, and like what's happening here is there's just different sine waves at different harmonics, and those just get randomly mixed in amongst the other things. That helps to kind of add this movement, but also like a bit of a weird, almost like a glassy texture in the top end. And then I usually just have a textural layer here. I'll kind of just throw in whatever random granular thing sounds great, you know. something broke there. Something went really weird. Not quite sure what happened there. Where can I find this plug? This is Faceplant. You can find it at killerhearts.com. It's obviously a paid plugin, but it's really, really, really good because you can stack up like so many different oscillators. It's got this granular mode, which is pretty unique. What would actually be really cool here is to enable poly mode. And so what that's going to do is it's going to kind of treat every effect that's on this lane as part of the voice. So when we trigger the filter, when it changes, when we trigger a new note, is only going to affect that new note. Do you know what I mean? Whereas without it, it kind of jumps when we trigger a new note. So if you're playing very polyphonic stuff, it can be very audible. I always feel like Faceplant doesn't offer room for enough modulators, but it does, and navigating how to maximize on them is part of the adventure. Do you mean in terms of the physical space here? I do kind of wish we had, you know, like how we have some kind of snap heap, but just for modulators. So you could do a bunch of stuff and then just send out one modulation, you know, and that would just make the whole thing a little bit easier. Just kind of nest modulation inside a thing. And that would be pretty cool. Yeah, I agree. But what I've started doing is doing stuff where, like, for example, here with this filter, it in this example, it's maybe not the greatest idea because we've got this poly setting on, where I would have the random inside this snap heap. So, for example, there'd be, I was about to start typing on my MIDI keyboard. I would put like the LFO in here, right? And then maybe just make a macro here for the speed and do all that kind of nesting here inside a snap heap rather than fill this lane up. But it's because there's that limitation of 64, but I've never really hit that limit. Because I know about it, I do the nesting, you know. I mean, that sounds great, just like as those two root notes, you know? Now we can maybe add in some higher notes, I think, as the thing progresses. I'm still getting so used to the new interface in the beta. Double content. I think around here, like, we can have like a filtered kick kind of thing here to start introducing the groove, and build it up here to another like big drop. Maybe have some kind of pluck sound, and then we go full on. I think we're going to want an EQ here. It sounds like there's some lows doing some stuff. Yeah. Should we just make the bass line now? And then we know what we're dropping into. I feel like that's going to be a bit easier. Then we can kind of do some effects and stuff based on like whatever we make, you know? I feel like I've done this process so many times on my channel. I'm not going to go through the full process of making a Cytron space because I probably have already like 100 videos on the topic. So I'm just going to use a preset from my Quantum bank for Serum 2. Zen Lion, how you doing? Yep, it's been a while, eh? Hey, Psyder, how you doing? It's been a while also. And you, Game Boy Z. It's like, hey, all the OGs are in the stream today. How's everyone doing? New Pigments, I've tried very, very briefly. Very briefly. I think there was also something here in the high frequencies which I wasn't digging too much, to be honest. -6 240. Let's check it out. Hey, my Logify, how are you doing? I think -6 is a bit too... For I try not to do such big sweeps below 500 hertz, because then you're really affecting the sound of the bass. I would then go back to the sound. Free oscilloscope. Isn't there the Bombshanker Machines one? Oculoscope, I think it's called. That's... I can't remember if that's free or paid. Why you don't release music. I mean, like, it's... I'll just put it on my YouTube or whatever the case is, but I feel like just the whole... the Spotify game is rigged and kind of pointless at the same time, so you know what I mean? It's just like I kind of just don't bother with that. I just do my thing here on YouTube. I feel like it's the most direct way as well, because you don't really have to like get playlisted or whatever the case is. Hey Matthias, how you doing? You can kind of just put it out and have that direct connection with your audience, whereas every other way of music revolves around like middlemen, and it's just like music is about the connection with the audience, right? So like, why do you do it if you're not having a good time with the people that are listening to it, you know? And so like if you boil it all down to that, like it's everything else is kind of just became a bit of a rat race, so you know. But yeah, I got some new stuff coming soon. There's a little bit of overlap, but I think at this point it's like so negligible. It's like minus whatever dB. It's not doing anything. Let's build a quick percussion loop. We can always come back to it. I mean, I wouldn't just put the percussion in here in terms of the arrangement, but it's always good to kind of know what you're building towards. So like know the end goal when you start the track, like know what the main drop is going to be, because that way you can kind of build up and build up towards that. It's not just like 7 minutes of random sounds. There's like a build to a goal, right? So like what I like to do when starting the track is to think about that goal first and then kind of work backwards from there. Thanks. I actually just grabbed a kick from my drums volume 1, Dash Glitch Drums volume 1. There is 71 kicks to choose from for psytrance, but also like more kind of harder sort of bass music-y kind of kicks and stuff here as well. You won't hear the preview, but I can put these into the timeline. But yeah, also just like a bunch of psytrance drums. I also have free kick packs on my store, by the way, so Christmas, the last 2 Christmases, I've released a free kick pack, Kickmas. Those are, the first one was 10 kicks, the second one is 22 kicks. A trick though, like if you find that your kicks are not punching enough, what you can do is you can use a hi-hat sample, and I think this kick is fine. It's fine. This kick is fine. It's not too bad. But see, it's got that nice top end on it. But if you're finding like your kick that you have doesn't have that, you can use a hi-hat sample and then just place it like on the kick and then just make it like very sharp decay. So I'm just going to use, I'm going to add it here, but I don't feel like it really needs it here, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Solo as well. You see, you can kind of use, even a bit of white noise works as well. A ride also works as well. But if your kick has enough top end, you shouldn't really need it, in my opinion. But also using a hat here, like in the place of a snare, is also pretty cool, because sometimes the snare is like too literal, too obvious. It's like doosh, doosh, doosh. And sometimes you don't want that type of groove. You just want to keep the kind of clock going, you know, so that the listener knows when the 1 and the 2 is, if that makes sense. I guess it kind of acts as a tambourine, you know, in a traditional sense. So I'll usually have simple stuff like that for these kind of more main elements, and then I'll choose like 1 or 2 samples that I'll kind of change it up a little bit to create more of a groove, just so that you have this kind of backbone groove, which is, you know, on the 1/4, like every kick, it's like the same da-da, 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 but then you have a little bit of deviation of like velocities or something on like one of the other layers, you know. Yeah, so then we can just put in all of these, make it go all the way, and then select them. Then over here on the side, next to this velocity menu, we can open up this, and it opens up the randomization. And so we can use this to create a rhythm. Scale, basically, you can actually see here like what it does. It basically scales in or out, and then mean is like the overall volume. I like this change that they've done to the UI. Subtle, but you know, where it kind of fades out a little bit. I think that's really cool. Then often, like, you'll be listening to it, and you'll hear like, okay, there's an obvious part here which actually has a better groove. So usually what I'll do is I'll end up writing a part with like a full bar, but then reducing the size, like picking, in this instance, the second part I think sounds the best. So we just loop that part. I mean, it's such a subtle thing, like the difference between that and this. It's so subtle, but in the overall kind of moving machine of little cogs, it makes a difference. Gate 12. I'll have to check it out. I've never heard of it. Filter. Cool, that's sounding good. Let's do some sweeps and stuff with Diva. Folks seem to really like that video I put out on it recently, so let's see what happens here. Oh, let me actually show you something sick. So this FM Ask 1 is coming from this oscillator. Depending on like which one you choose, it'll be the first one there, right? But also by default, this is the one that we're hearing, but we can switch it over so that we hear number 2, and then we can use number 1 as like a FM oscillator. So what we're going to do is just set this to a saw as well, so it's the same as what we had. And now we can set this to a triangle, which is I guess closest to a sine wave, and then turn this up for FM stuff. We can even turn off the inputs. So it's literally just the peak, like the resonance of the filter creating that sound, right? There's like no oscillators actually going in. That's the slip sound when you slip. I think whew, I think that's too much for so early in the track, though. Yes. I'm gonna try to do the same schedule every Friday. However, I can't do. I'll probably just do like 2 hours. Probably just do 2 hours every Friday, same time. Let's just keep it like basic sweeps for now. We can go into the alien farts territory a little bit later on. Damn, this thing is like an intro all on its own, eh? Wow. Oh yeah, so here what we can do, so here it's like too quick, that envelope 2, so we can actually use this lag thing here to grab the output from envelope 2 and then feed this in here as the input instead, and then use this to kind of slow it down a bit so it kind of goes as opposed to just straight up boom into the envelope. That's it, eh? Just the classic glide sound. After all that, it's just got to be that. Yeah, man, we all do. The question is, where do we put it on the beat? Does it go doof doof down, or do we start with? Do you know what I mean? Bow. Or do we do it on the offbeat? We should actually slow down the progression so it happens half as much. And we can kind of lean a bit more into the delay of it, maybe even a quarter. I'm parched, fellas. I gotta go get some a water refill and take a quick run to the loo. I will answer your question, W sound, as soon as I get back. I will let this loop once or twice. I'll be back very, very soon. Yeah, it's interesting that Duduk has a very vocal sound. I think it's due to, obviously, you hear a lot of breath through the instrument, but also the frequency range that it's in. There's a lot of like mythical stuff about it that is actually pretty interesting, because like there's like a lot of things about how like there's a woman's soul trapped in the duduk, and when you play it, you can hear her yearning to be free or something like that. A lot of weird mythical stuff, but like when you hear it, it does sound like a sort of woman's voice kind of crying out. It's like, it's interesting. Obviously, it's kind of based on like that's what they heard, and so. But I don't know if I'm getting it correct, but yeah, it's a lot of interesting tales and stories about the instrument. It's like one of the oldest instruments around. It just sounds so damn good. Hey? It's got that vocal texture, and it kind of sits so nicely in a psytrance track, because I think it kind of sounds very vocal, very windy. Yeah. Okay, so beginner music producer, what would you say is the most difficult thing to learn when it comes to sidetrance music production? So I think that the most difficult thing to learn is arrangement, because most of the other things are kind of technical. There's something that you can sort of read a book and learn. I've got tutorials and that kind of thing. But arrangement is one of those things where you kind of have to go on feeling. Do you know what I mean? You can copy somebody else's track and go for it one by one, but to learn how to do it yourself, you kind of have to go by feeling, and that just takes experience. It's not book knowledge, it's grafting knowledge. So I think that's the hardest thing to learn, because it's not something that you can kind of study. You just have to do it, over and over and over and over and over again, thousands of times, until you have your flow. I think that's pretty much the hardest thing. What would you guys think? If I had to put the question out to you guys, what would you say in the chat? What is the hardest thing that for you? I think it could be interesting, because maybe I could see maybe I could do a tutorial on it or whatever. But yeah, what would you folks say is the hardest thing to learn for music production, or maybe just in general sidetrance music production, or in particular sidetrance music production? What do you think for this one? More melodic, or kind of more FM rhythmic for a sort of main theme? Should we do epic anthem vibes? I think that could be pretty cool as a build. Do you know what I mean? So we started off. So I guess 140 BPM. This is most likely going to be a not a main, taking things beyond the loop can be difficult. Yeah, I think for me, like the biggest solution for that is to lean into the loop and like make it as good as possible, and then kind of just shift the DAW timeline, and then just start making another loop here, but don't copy the stuff over. Start making another loop here with like new ideas, and then think about like how you can connect the two. It can be a breakdown and a build up or whatever the case is, or what you can do is in the one part you can think, oh, now I need a melodic bit, but now you've made a melodic bit in the other part, and you can kind of start borrowing from one to the other. So the best thing to like take yourself out of the loop is to literally just do that. Like, don't copy anything from the loop completely. Treat it as like a completely new track, but in the same key, tempo, etc. And then you can borrow things from one part into the next. But then also, let's say here we've got our main part, just for argument's sake. Say this is full percussions, kick bass, main leads, sound effects, like this is the full track. Then I would say move it to where you need it as like that full part. So show timeline, move it to like 4 minutes, and then work backwards. Just like copy the whole thing and just remove a couple of elements, like boom, boom, and then do it again, remove a couple of elements, and then jump in and start to go like that, make a break, and fill in the gaps here and there. But yeah, taking the loop and like working backwards and stripping it down, that was quite a massive jump in my productions from loop stage to full arrangement stage when I started doing that. Yeah, of course, using a reference track is a fantastic, actually copying somebody else's track in there and then following that. But still, like, once you have the loop, put in a reference track, find like the main drop, put your loop there where the main drop is, and then kind of follow the thing backwards from there. You know what I mean? It's obviously not going to sound exactly the same. You don't want that, though. You want it to be unique, but you'll start to pick up little things from the arrangement, like the amount of times you'll see in psytrance where the drop is not actually like on the beat, it's like shifted a little bit, or weird things like that, where like the bar will maybe be like 10 beats as opposed to 16 or 8, or and then you'll be like, oh, that's a cool trick, like I didn't pick that up by listening to it, and then you can start to use that as part of your box of tricks. You know what could be cool is kind of like a call and response type of thing where we have maybe a more rhythmic FM type thing here in the gaps. Do you know what I mean? There was this one that sounded pretty sweet. I think it was this one. No, wait, there was a more bubbly sounding one. Although I think that might be too kind of like high-tech dark side-ish vibes. One thing I always see that kind of intimidating, especially in sidetrans production, is the sheer number of parts within a track. Is that always necessary? Do you mean vertically or horizontally? Do you mean like the amount of build, break, drop, that kind of thing, or do you mean that way? I guess it's up to you at the end of the day. Like you can make minimal music. There's a lot of psytrance that's more progressive and minimal, where it's just kick, bass, one percussion element, and like one plucky lead element, and like that's it. Obviously, then the build-ups and the breaks, there will be more stuff to create tension and release, but often in the more minimal progressive stuff, it's number of instruments. Yeah, okay. It's up to you at the end of the day, to be honest. Like that's, I think, one thing that is a bit of a misconception. Obviously, it's hard to say because, but like when you listen to psytrance music, it sounds like it's hundreds, 200, 300 tracks. Sometimes producers do produce music that some of the psytrance producers do have projects with a lot of tracks in them, but most of the time it'll be like, a single sample on a track and another single sample on a track, etc., etc. So often it's unnecessary, and the main sort of layers of sound that you hear can often be achieved in 20, 30 tracks, maybe maximum, but it's helpful to have as many at your disposal. Obviously, in situations where you want like this and this are the same sample, but they're using up two channels because I don't want to have to fade from one into the other, all that kind of stuff. Hey, Davey, how you doing? So, having lots of channels is nice, but it's not essential. Do you know what I mean? Most like modern house music is just like a loop, a bass, and a kick. Like that's it, like a loop sample, a bass, and a kick. Obviously the complexities in like the arrangement and the mix and the groove and all these other things, but like I feel like the sound of psytrance leads itself to feel like it's like these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of layers, but it's often a couple, like maybe 10 synths in a project maximum that are like live midis. The rest will kind of just be samples and sound effecty things and that kind of stuff. But if we look at like the important parts here in this project, it's one kick layer, one bass layer. That phase plant is in the intro, just doing the intro thing, so that potentially could just be a sample. And then we have Diva, it could also just potentially be a sample, and then like two main lead elements in this part. So like there's not really much going on, and then we have the percussion stuff. Not too many layers. The trick is to fake it so it sounds like there's lots of layers. And in that instance, delays and reverbs are your friend. because they kind of make it sound like there's like lots of layers. Live drumming for sidetrons, yeah, absolutely. Do you mean in the live context, or do you mean like recording it on a track? Because I mean, Infected Mushroom, that's like, isn't that mainly what they do nowadays? Obviously, I mean, they have the more electronic arrangements and stuff, but their touring band is a drummer and a guitarist, and then them. Gotcha. Infected Mushroom tutorials. I'll have a look into it. I feel like it's such a weird thing. Like, so many times I get the comment like, "Oh, your music sounds like Infected Mushroom," or and like, to somebody who listens to Psytrance, it doesn't. Obviously, they're a huge influence. It could just be that people are like, "Oh, it's Psytrance. It sounds like Infected Mushroom," because they're the biggest group, in the scene. And then often, like my tutorials, people say, "Oh, that sounds like Infected Mushroom." So I guess it's one of those things where I kind of just didn't do, because I felt like I maybe covered those grounds already. But they do have particular sounds that are like super unique to this, to their vibe, which I could look into for sure. But yeah, Polyverse plugins will get you a long way there, particularly iWish. Their whole kind of shtick is like vocals with iWish on it. And what iWish is, it's just like a... Oh wait, I could just show you rather than explaining. It sort of takes a sound and chops it into lots of little pieces, and those pieces are timed to the note that you play on the keyboard. So let me find these vocal sounds. The good old wizard, hey? When last? I'm going to make a couple of audio channels and then just randomly throw vocal sounds onto them, just so we kind of fill up all the spaces, if you know what I mean. And then we're going to group them. Let's actually overlap them just so that there's kind of always audio playing. And then we can just loop this part. Now on the group we put I wish. And there we go, infected mushroom. We're going to want a MIDI channel. And then this one we want to send out to plugins, group, I wish. So now when you play the note, it will chop it to the speed. Are we in G?
Ancient standing stone, and then connect.
I wonder why it's not receiving the MIDI.
And then brilliant. And then and standing, and then shadows of power, and then shadows power, and brilliant, and then the shaded, and the brilliant ancient standing connected. Connected of power, and like ancient standing stone, and then connected shadows the ancient stone, and then connect.
We should put in a MIDI here. I'm just going to do random stuff. Actually, you know what's going to be easiest? Just got random MIDI clips here, which I can pull from. There we go. Boom.
Ancient stack.
I wonder why it's not sending from here to here. Do we have to set something up here? Or what we could actually do is rather just set up a note receiver here. Note receiver, and set it to inst5. That should work now. Oh, we need to transpose this so that it's in key to the track. 7.
Ancient standing stone, ancient standing stone, and then connected shadows of power, and ancient standing stone, and then connected shadows of power, and ancient standing stone, and then connected shadows of power, and ancient standing stone, and then connected shadows.
supermodal and filterverse are also fantastic. I'm loving filterverse. Although I guess it's kind of more, it's more open-ended. It's not going to just immediately give you the infected mushroom sound. However, that being said, there's a lot of presets in here from Erase, like half of infected mushroom. think these sounds should be side chained. I think I've got a setup here. I can just copy paste. think we need other delay and reverb. The one there wasn't sounding too great, so let's just use the Bitwig one. And then my rack here, which has Valhalla Supermassive. These kinds of things here, like before any like main drops, I like to drop into some kind of mini break or something first. I just feel like it helps to create this kind of like tension and release. You know, you build, break, poof, you know, rather than just like a loop and then a loop with a little bit more and then a loop with a little bit more and a loop with a little bit more. You're actually like creating some kind of dynamic arrangement. So let's go. We can put in some of the stuff that we had here, like that kick, or at least it's a sub impact. Let's use that atmos sound as well, the Duduk. And like here, we can maybe introduce the lead slightly, but not like all the way, just like one hit of it. And then do we drop here or here? That's the question. I think it should go da 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 with a lead, and then the Duduk should play afterwards, not like overlapping each other, if you know what I mean. That's sick. We kind of just use it a little bit more minimally, not like on the drop. Here we, excuse me. Here we can have some kind of more, something else happening there. Maybe like an atmos sweep type of sound. Hey, what's up, Suffist? How you doing? I'm probably going to head out quite soonish. I'll do one more. Let's do one more lead. Let's actually do it from scratch. Let's make a lead sound from scratch. Okay, maybe I should talk about some tricks for like writing like acid op lead melodies. So usually what I do is kind of think about if I'm stuck for ideas. I do usually try to play it out on the keys for and kind of think like, how does this rhythm or notes sound? But if I'm stuck for ideas, I'm not feeling particularly creative, a cool idea is to think about it like a numbers game where you say like, okay, just think of a random number like 5, and then every 5th thing put down a note, right? Yeah, so there'll be a gap of 4 in between. Every 5th put down a note. We may need a bigger MIDI anyway, and then let's just make it like this, and then again think of another random number like 7, and then try go 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and then move it to the closest note that's like in the scale, right? So 7 happens to be in the scale, so we're good here. And then you just repeat that process until you have a bunch of random stuff, or you offset this slightly. So let's say, for example, let's say 1 2, so it's now on the offbeat, and we fill in the gaps with the root note. So it'll be 1 2 1 2 3 4, etc. Or alternating root notes where it's like down up down up down up. In fact, once we've done one repeating one, we can kind of just copy it from here because it'll be the same. And then randomly go in and change some of them to other notes that are in the scale. So we've kind of created a movement. Now we can go in and edit it slightly to add a little bit of spice here or there or whatever. Let's mute this. It's really sounding pretty cool, to be honest. Something's already kind of like telling me that we could leave all this and just have this sort of top lead note changing. And then up and then down maybe. We can also go in and actually make the bottom notes shorter a little bit and the top notes longer a little bit, and then actually make the patch legato and give it a bit of glide. Ah, yes, there we are, folks. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much. I mean, this kind of does sound like a metal lead riff. You know what I mean? So I can believe that. And in the good old, some distortion, multiple filters, and then we are good. Let's try BH or HB. It is like, it's actually particularly good. That thing with the sequences, it's particularly good for the reason why I said acid sounds is hardware, and even more so the 303 type sequencer, because essentially you just pick a random number and then you go step, next step, next step, and you kind of just spam it out like, okay, so there's 4 gaps. You go 1 1 2 3 4 1 1 2 3 4 1, so you can kind of like really quickly do it. You know what I mean? DT880 Pro's earpads for cleaning. I need to do mine soon as well. Okay, I'm getting carried away. You know what's a cool thing also to do is free run LFO, boom, set it to the pan, and then every now and then just boom. You telling me, bro? I was about to pop out my drawing pad. The stuff nowadays, like, is so visual, like the plugins and stuff. Sometimes you forget you're actually making music, and you're like, crazy stuff. Oh, that is sweet. That is sweet. In case you're wondering, that's me on the Duduk. That's me playing the Duduk. I've been teaching myself to play. It's so fucking hard. It is so hard to play because almost all other reed-based instruments are kind of set in pitch, right? So like a saxophone has a pitch. The keys on the saxophone change the pitch. Like, that's it. As far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. But with double reed instruments, and particularly this one, it's like you can change the pitch based on how you blow it. So it's like, literally when I'm like playing, I have a tuner on and I'm like watching it, and it's like going down and up, and it's like playing a freaking like a challenge game, you know, where like it's pretty good. Good practice. But yeah, that's been super fun. Even though like it's even just for like one note, just record that, add it in, just adds that extra little zing. Makes all the difference, man. Anyway, folks, I'm out. I'm going to head out. I'll let this loop once or twice for those who want to stick around and hear what we made so far. That was quite a productive session. Holy moly. Play the handpan. I guess it's the thing with handpan is that it's like very much on like how you strike the drum, and like I've played a lot of drums in my life, not actual drum kits, but djembes and congas and that. I don't have any, but I've played so many in my life. I think maybe I just instinctively have the technique, because you do have to kind of hit it in the correct place and that kind of thing, so it can be pretty hard. But the cool thing about the handpan is that the notes will always be right, if you know what I mean. It's kind of similar to a flute in that, or at least wooden flutes, in that they're tuned to a particular scale, whereas the duduk, it has a scale, but like if you blow higher, the pitch can go up and down, and then on top of that, the more you play it in a session, the pitch goes down, and you have to like adjust the pitch as you play. So it's like, you'll play a bit and you'll notice it's like going up and down, but then it's going a bit this way, so then you change there's like a pitch adjuster on the reed which you have to like tighten, and but I think it's really good ear training. Do you know what I mean? Because now I can kind of, eventually I'll get to the point where I don't need the tuner, hopefully, and I can play it and be like, this is an E, this is an F. And as a musician, that's like an invaluable skill to have, to just be able to listen to something and be like, okay, this is an A note, and then on top of that, listen to multiple intervals and be like, okay, this is not only an A note, this is an A minor. Do you know what I mean? Just straight off the bat, boom. Invaluable skill to have as a musician. I think like playing instruments like that, where it's the best way to train, I guess. Anyway, yeah, blabbering too much. I'm out. Hope you guys have a fantastic Friday evening, and I will see you again soon. Next week Friday, but yeah, Monday as well. New video on Monday. Yeah. Cheers, folks.